6 months ago, I had some students at the college change my valve cover, change my timing belt, and adjust my valves. And at that time, I replaced the gaskets here. But what I didn't do is they didn't replace this cam plug over here. And that is now leaking. So today, we're going to pull this valve cover off, and then we're going to change this cam plug and show you how to do that on my 1994 Acura Integra. Zooming in on the end of this cam plug, we can see the oil dripping out the bottom of the cam plug. So right there I see oil coming out, and that oil has been going down that cylinder head and dripping on the exhaust and making a burning smell. It's also dripping on the ground a little bit. And here we see how it's wet. So that's definitely been leaking. To make this repair, I will use a 3/8 ratchet, a 10mm deep socket, a flat blade screwdriver, slip joint pliers, some engine silicone sealer that is oxygen sensor safe and high temperature resistant, a 6-inch 3/8 extension, and a torque wrench that can torque a bolt as low as 8 foot-pounds. Additionally, I will need some denatured alcohol or some brake clean, and I like to use a lint-free shop towel. I have valve cover bolts here, two here, two here. I have a bolt here and a bolt here that have to come off along with these wires. Now I'm going to start with these two because they got the clips for the wires, and that'll keep these wires in the right location, although it's pretty easy to figure out where they go. This one over here holds the bracket on for the power steering hose. There's one more over here that I forgot to mention. And also be careful that you don't want to lose these either. And if you didn't just replace these, then you should be replacing these. And I was using a 10mm socket and ratchet and extension to get those. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to loosen up these these grommets here. I don't want them falling off on me and getting lost. So this should pull off. There is one other thing. I've got a hose clamp over here with the breather. That has to come off of the valve cover. A pair of pliers will do that. So we can lift our valve cover up out of the way. And then we can pull it off with that hose. I'm going to flip it over. And had this gasket not been just replaced, it's still very pliable, so I'm going to be able to reuse that along with these grommets that are for the spark plug tubes. And I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this oil up right now, so I don't get any down inside those spark plug tubes, and so I don't drip any more down the side of my block. So this last cam cover is what has to come off. So we're going to take that off. Notice these were two different lengths. The longer one went here. So in the end, we had 3 of the same length and 1 longer one. So I'm just going to do a gentle little tap right on that bottom edge right there. This is pretty soft material, so you want to be careful. So there it is right there. So now we can pull this plug out. It's pretty hard. And we need to dry the oil out of this area. So I've got some silicone from the last time I did this in here. So I'm going to take a few minutes and clean that off, and then we'll come back and show you how to put that in and reassemble. So I've cleaned up the oil here. I've cleaned this up really well, and we want to make sure that you get right down in there and that's nice and dry back inside there. So there's my new cam plug. Wipe it dry one last time, then install the new cam plug. I've got this part, this has been all cleaned and dry all the way around. And we're going to go ahead and make sure those bearing surfaces are okay. These are going to go back on. And then we're going to go ahead and put those bolts back in there. And if you remember, the long one was here. And the other dark colored one was there. And these two go here. And these don't have a very big torque, somewhere around 7 or 8 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and make sure we get that taken care of. Nice even pull, carefully until it clicks. And then I'll come back over and do this one more time. So if I was in the shop, I'd be using some brake clean to clean these grooves out where the gasket goes. But I'm working from home, and denatured alcohol works really, really well, and it's available at all your local hardware stores or Home Depots. So we're going to use the denatured alcohol, and I'm going to try to use a really clean towel if I can, or clean rag. So let's go ahead and put some of this on this towel. Then we're going to get in and stick it down into that groove cutout. And I just want to make sure I clean this really well, making sure it's nice and dry. I'm going to go all the way around. And you'll notice that it's picking up some dirt right on here. So I'm not sure if you can see that dirt, but we're definitely getting dirt. So I'm going to go along and clean all these, and if it gets dirty, then you want to come over and flip the towel over so you get back into a clean spot, and you can go ahead and get these spark plug tube seals as well. So let's get this all cleaned up. So I'm going to go along and do all these, and we'll be back to put the valve cover back on. Additionally, I opted to get the new gasket for it instead of reusing the other gasket. And I also opted to get the gaskets or the grommet seals as well. So two important parts about putting this gasket on is, one, I want to take you in really close to the edge of this gasket, and this little nub right there, that's designed to make sure the gasket stays in the groove when you flip it over and put it onto your valve cover. So that's why when you reuse this valve cover gasket, it's difficult to put it back on, is because those get all soft and soaked. The other thing to be cautious of is that these tube seals right here, they're one way as well. So if you can see a little bit right in here, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit closer. There's a little lip right here, and that's not on this side, so these go on this way. So this is all set to be put on. I'm not sure if you saw this, but when I took this off, this seal right here fell off and into the engine. So I'm going to make sure to take that out because we don't want that in there. We're also going to use the same technique of denatured alcohol on the gasket area of the cylinder head. So we're going to take this denatured alcohol right here, put it onto a clean rag, and make sure these surfaces are all nice and clean and dry as well. So I personally like to put just a little dab, just a tiny dab of silicone right in that crease right inside there. And we don't need much. So too much could actually create a problem. So I'm just going to go in and just put a tiny bit right in here. That's all I need, is that tiny little dab. Put a small dab on the other side of the cam bearing, as well as on the other 3 cam bearings. Now we can put the valve cover on. And when I flip this over, I just want to make sure the gasket doesn't fall out of place, but I don't think it will. And so we're going to quickly get this over, carefully get this down where it goes. And I can feel it pushing against the gasket right inside there, which is good. And I'm going to put these 4 and this one on for right now. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's start with the 4 corners and the one in the front. I'm leaving these 2 because those have brackets for the spark plug wires. So we'll carefully crisscross as we snug these down. And before I go any further, I'm going to double check and make sure my gasket is all in good in place down there. So there we go. It looks to be all the way seated. And we can come over from the back side. Kind of see that. The other thing we can do is look down the spark plug holes. And instead of moving the camera, you're going to have to take my word for it as I come back over here and look to make sure that the gasket is properly all the way around. You can see in the spark plug holes, I can see orange all the way around. And I'm going to do that for each one of these spark plug holes. So we know that that gasket has not fallen out of place. Okay, let's go ahead. A little bit more snugging here now that I'm certain my gasket is properly positioned. And now my spark plug wires can come in place. And let's not forget the grommet that goes up underneath this one, and the grommet that comes up underneath that one. And then we finish snugging these up in a crisscross pattern. And we have the bracket bolt for the spark plug wires we can put back. And the bracket bolt for the power steering pump hose. So these are self-stopping, but I want to make sure to torque those. So the torque is something like 7.3 foot-pounds. I've set this to 8 foot-pounds. And so let's go ahead. Nice and even. Don't jerk your torque wrench, just pull it nice and even until it clicks. And the very last thing is don't forget to put our breather back on. And to finish my job, I'm going to get in here with some degreaser. I'm going to go ahead and clean up all this oil that got down underneath here and underneath the car. And here's one thing we do want to take note of is take a good look. Make sure that looks nice and dry and clean so that when you go back in later, you'll be able to tell if there is any leakage there.